Hello, theme park enthusiasts, and welcome back to Planet Coaster and to Appleford Amusement Park. In this episode, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping in the park, change things as I want them, and then I'm going to go ahead and work on a burger shop for the park. Sort of the first indoor restaurant that we're going to have in the place. So first thing you can see here is I'm going ahead and I'm just adjusting the paths so that all the exterior queue lines are now going to be asphalt, which I feel like makes it more realistic. Considering the temperature and the different weather and stuff you'd have, just having the wooden paths inside really didn't work. So I'm changing those, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and change all the other ones to asphalt as well. This is a somewhat lower budget park. I mean, I wouldn't say it's low budget by any means, but it's not the extravagance of a theme park. And so really, I feel like having the basic asphalt paths here just fits more with what this place is going to be. So I went ahead and put in these instead. So as I said, we're just changing it up to the asphalt instead of the paving stones there. Because paving stones, I felt like really that would be a little bit higher budget and a little bit outside what this park would spend on something like the paths. So go ahead and put these in. Once we're done with that, then as I said, we'll go ahead and work on the new location. I recognize that a lot of people who are building parks in Planet Coaster often will do interiors and stuff. A lot of the people who are putting them on YouTube do very detailed interiors that are really not functional things. And for this park, I really don't want to go down that route too much. I will do some interior, as you will see in some episodes, but for the most part, what I'm going to do in the park is going to be things that can be used by the guests. So I'm going to change things, as I said, like these paths so that they can be functional. Here I realized that we actually had a little bit of trash going on in the tunnel, so I wanted to get somebody over there to take care of that. And adjusting the path here as well. But overall, as I said, I want things that are going to be functional. I'm not going to use up a bunch of the detail in the park on things that aren't going to really work towards actually how the park is going to function. So with that in mind, this burger shop is going to be using, I wanted it to be open to a point so you could see it through the windows and stuff. So I did not want sort of the restaurant style that they have in the game. So what I ended up doing here is I'm going to go ahead and use several of the shops and put them into one building together. So here we're starting on it. You can see we're putting in a restroom. I'm going to put in a shake and a burger and a french fry location, as well as I believe I put in a chicken one as well. Just so that way we have the different restaurants in there. Now I'm building out this area here that's going to be for seating. So that way I can actually put in benches and such. Hopefully I'll get some guests to sit in them. I will say at this point in time, I haven't seen any guests actually using them yet, so that is a little bit of an annoyance, but hopefully in time they may. Then I'm just moving the restaurant buildings forward some so that they actually connect to the pathing that I just created there. So in this way, as I said, creating the interior of the building, but making it functional. I also decided I wanted to add in an ATM so that way people would have another place that they could buy things as they needed. So then just playing with it a little bit just to get it so that all the paths connected properly. And then I can go ahead and start worrying about the design of the building around this. I realized quickly that trying to do it as part of the building connected to the actual restaurants that are in it wasn't going to work exactly how I wanted. So instead, I went ahead and built the building based on the flooring, and then I'll just make adjustments to sort of hide the restaurants in it as need be. For this, as I said, the whole purpose of this building is I wanted to be able to see into it from the exterior. I wanted that sort of visual, not only for the game itself, but I feel like a lot of restaurants in a park like this would be sort of open so that guests walking by could see into it, they could see somebody enjoying a burger or such, and that they would then go in themselves to go ahead and enjoy something to eat. So with that, instead of using mostly walls here, I go ahead and use these posts that are still offset at the same amount, and so that way I can go ahead and put glass in between them and make it sort of glass walls just to give that visual. Then along the bottom here, I go ahead and trim it out with some wood. Make it look a bit more like a building, or like what I'm envisioning as far as the building here. Once again, when I'm doing one of these buildings, I find sometimes it just does not exactly want to put the pieces where you want them to. So had to play around with it a little bit. Had a fight with the location of the shops. Didn't want to go where I wanted, so I decided, you know what, I'll just take the wall out one more place. Not a huge deal. Look, I raised it up there just so I could eliminate the pieces of wall that I no longer needed. And then I was able to lower it back down, make sure that it's not levitating anywhere because of the ground level around it. And then I went ahead and put in this shorter piece of wood here, just so that way, again, the windows are somewhat contained within the wood. And I got my glass here and started putting it in. And as I said, I felt like this was a bit more effort than if I had just simply used one of the restaurants that comes in the game, but I wanted something that was different in that aspect. I wanted sort of an open restaurant where people could come in, grab a burger and some fries. If they wanted to eat inside, they can, but at the same time, if they just want to walk out and enjoy the park with it, they also have that option. I decided then that I wanted to add in another entrance to the place over in this corner. Sort of regretted having waited till this point to put it in, because then I had to fight with the building a bit there in order to get it where I wanted it. But I was able to achieve it in the end. Then we went ahead and continued with the glass work around the sides here. Now I have thought about possibly later coming back, maybe when I'm doing the overall detail work with like the plants in the park and such. And I've thought about putting in some things from the Theme Maker's Toolkit. I know people have done some really great things with like ketchup bottles and things of that nature. And so I have toyed with the idea of putting in sort of a center island into the area, so that way the people can get their condiments from that and such, even though obviously it won't be functional. Just to add to the design a little bit. I'm leaving that for right now because of the fact that I want to make sure that the game and this park is functioning well as it is before I do something like adding a detail like that in. Again, I realize the fact that with this game, one of the biggest challenges with it sometimes is that it will just kill a computer because of the fact that it's all the little details in it are just overloading its computer, the computer's capabilities. So I don't want that to happen here. So as I said, I'm going to go ahead and leave details like that I don't feel are important to the overall park till the end. First, I want to get everything in that I want in the park. So here I'm going ahead and putting in sort of a fake floor to cover up the fact that the actual area where the people can walk doesn't actually go all over in the building. But I feel like putting in this fake floor does sort of cover it fairly well. There are the little places there where it was, where the locations were causing an issue with it. And so I just adjusted the whole building slightly, and I was able to get that to sort of be dealt with. Here I'm just flipping these pieces around, which makes it when two pieces are blurring together, by flipping them around twice there, it suddenly stops the blurring from going on. Doesn't always work as a trick, but it does a majority of the time, so nice little trick there. And so that's just what I'm doing here, just to get rid of sort of that cutting between the two pieces. Doesn't work in all the locations. Here I tried to be cute, do it with an entire piece. Did not want to work that way, so I ended up having to go back in and just do it one piece at a time as it was. But at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about the park. I mean, we've got some rides already in the location, and we've got now a restaurant area for people to get some food at and such. The next place that we're going to set up is going to be a gift shop, because I feel like a good park toward the front of the park is going to have a nice gift shop in place so that people can go ahead and get things that they want. And so, same type of idea here. I want to have that capability for my guests. And so next building, sort of what I've sort of got planned here is this main entrance area is going to be very visually doubled. So on each side, it's going to have things that are similar to the opposite side, but not quite the same. And so I'm going to take the basic structure of this building and have something that's very, very similar in nature that I'm going to put on the opposite side where I'm going to have the gift shop. Basically what I'm going to do is change up the colors somewhat so that it's not exactly matching, but it's going to be very similar. And I'm going to do that also with some rides in this area. So when you're walking down this midway into the park, you're going to see things on both sides that are going to look very similar, but as I said, slightly different from one another. So you would have a different experience if you go to things on the different sides. This is, for one, I feel like going to make it a little bit easier to create, but also, as I said, I really like the idea of the visual doubling that's going to go on with that, so that you're seeing the same thing on both sides, which will allow your focus to sort of go down the pathway towards the monster, which is really the focal point that I want for the park. I don't want this stuff up the front of the park here to distract you too much from looking down at that major coaster. So here I'm trying to make sure that everything is connected properly. I am seeing that the ATM was not connected properly there, and I do end up having to adjust it like that. Then I'm deciding which tables I want here. I'm going to make them fairly fancy because this is going to be sort of the restaurant in the place where you can see the tables like this. So I wanted something that was a little bit standout. I wanted to use these purple runners to continue with that purple and gold theme that's going on in the park. Here, looking at it, I decided, you know what? While I like the glass, I did want these windows to be a little bit less to the ground and with the floor right next to them. So I went ahead and raised all these wall pieces up one, and that way just made it a little bit more realistic in my mind. There would be that little edge at the bottom there, so that way if people were walking by and they accidentally bumped it with their foot or something, you're not kicking glass, you're just kicking the wood runner at the bottom of it. So at this point I sort of feel like the actual function of the building here is good. It's set up the way I want it to be, and so now it's really much more about the theming of the building. So I wanted to add some extra colors to it and such so that I could put in the purples and the golds to it as I wanted, and then I needed to figure out what I wanted to do as far as a roof. As I said, I didn't really want to get to the point where this was going to be a very tall building because I don't want it to detract from the monster being where it is. So with that in mind, I'm definitely going to go with a flat roof on the building, but I needed to sort of think about how I could make a design with it or add to it to make it look interesting instead of just a basic building. Here, as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm actually creating the lighting system that I'm going to have in the location, just using some beams and some additional lights here. Just to, I mean, they aren't exactly even all the way across, but they're close enough, and that way I can just take these posts, lower them into position where I want them, and then rotate them over, and then just copy and paste them along the area so that they sort of are directly over each of the beams. And I wanted to ensure that I have enough lights in the location, so adding a few extra here just to make sure. So we get sort of a grid pattern going on across the area. As I've said in previous videos for this park, I feel like lighting is going to be a very important thing. I wanted to sort of have that classic feel of sort of a carnival meets old amusement park with sort of the fairy lights going on everywhere and the really big lit signs for everything. So here I'm just trying to choose which flat roof I feel will work best for what I'm doing. I realized suddenly that the gold that was on these runners is not exactly what I wanted on the tables. So I'm going back through and changing each of the individual runners to be the gold that I have for the park, or the more yellow color that I have for the park. Just so I'm maintaining that same consistency throughout the entire place. Then just putting down a nice flat roof here. But as I said, I don't want the building just to look like a giant box. So I do want to change that up and add some interest to it. So that's what I'm looking for here, is deciding which of these elements I feel like will work. I like the fact that this one has some lights on it and such, so I'm playing around with it a bit. And then I want something for the corners as well, because just one piece in the middle just does seem sort of like an afterthought, that something's just tossed on top of the roof. Doesn't really add too much to it. So I feel like having these in the corners will add a little bit more, and again, a little bit more lighting up top on the building, just to add to that overall aesthetic of the place. Much as I did with the monsters building, considering how flat the roof is, I wanted to add a little architectural detail here. So I found this piece of wood molding, and I just am going to go ahead and add it along the sides here, just so it makes it where it doesn't seem like a flat roof was just slapped on top of the walls there. I do find it very interesting in this game that sometimes I will be putting on these side pieces and I'll just want to rotate it 90 degrees, which should in theory work just by using the snap feature to it. But when you actually do that, it doesn't seem like it actually is 90 degrees. It seems like it's slightly off, so that it'll start, when you're doing the side, then coming away from the building and such. Same thing here. I should be able to just copy and paste directly over to the other side and it should work perfectly fine. And in some cases it does, and in other cases it really does not. No real rhyme or reason as to why that seems to happen. Just seems like something with the game, where sometimes the pieces don't want to go in an exact line of where they're supposed to be. So you will see me often checking quite a bit to make sure that things are lining up as they are supposed to. Now, one thing I realized afterwards is really what I should have done is I should have put my lighting onto these pieces before I went ahead and copied them the way I did, because then I could have copied the lighting along with the pieces and saved myself a lot of time. It's one of those, still learning with the game, still trying to figure out how to save myself some time and effort and things, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of trial and error. So I hope that I will learn that lesson in time. I still do make that mistake, I know, but it's one of those that hopefully I can grow from this, and as I said, that way I won't have to spend this extra time on doing the lighting in the future. I will say though, it is a handy tip to go ahead and copy and just reverse the lighting for the opposing sides. If you're doing lighting like this, it will save you a bunch of time, and it works on buildings like this where it is sort of a rectangle or you have 90-degree walls. When I was doing it for the monster, I had to do each individual piece, and that is painful. Is I guess the best word for it. For here though, it's easy enough where you can just copy it, flip it around, and put it on the other wall. So it does save you a bunch of time. I do recommend using that trick whenever you're making your own buildings in the game, because it's such a time saver. So then here I had this empty space and I wanted to make some kind of a feature out of it, so I used some old-fashioned neon, which I felt would sort of work with the park as well, and I wanted to go ahead and make a sign out of it along with the neon. So we've got Appleford, and we'll go with burgers and fries. I I had thought at one point of making the buildings sort of name brands. I know that you can on the workshop find stuff for like KFC and Starbucks and such. But the more I thought about it, for this type of park especially, they would have their own brands. They would just get their meat and potatoes and stuff like that through a vendor, or even just going to a Walmart themselves for it, and then they would go ahead and produce them in-house. So I wanted to go ahead and keep with that, and so the building is very much unique and original. It's not something that is a marketed brand, and same thing with the name on it and such, really just showing that this is part of a mom and pop style park, and it's basically a mom and pop style burger joint. And considering that the train comes through this way, wanted to put in a little bit extra neon in order to make it look that little bit nicer from that way, so it could grab your attention while you're on the train, and that way when you're coming back around it might be, I want to go ahead and grab a burger from there. So just that sort of value of trying to engage the audience in that way. Here I decided, the building still looked a little bit plain, so on the corners here I wanted to add this decorative element that I had on the top portion, and so I'm just adjusting it so that it fits on the corners properly. Again, it should just very easily go from one side to the other and such, but it does not always work that way. It does seem to want to fight at points in time, so it takes a little bit of trial and error. Just if you use some patience, it will work out in the end for you. And I really liked how it came out looking. As I said, it's one of those, it takes a little bit of time, but it is worth it. Because just these little details make your buildings, I feel, look more original, but at the same time realistic than they would otherwise. So here I'm just checking how it looks overall and deciding, what, I need some lighting around the windows as well. I don't need a decoration around them, but I do really want some lighting around them. So I went ahead and setting up the fairy lights along those, just so that way the building has that extra little bit of light to it. Here again, I'm going to use the trick of going ahead and copy and pasting it, so that way I save myself some time in doing this. As you can see, it just makes it so much easier when you do it that way. Then I'm just going to take these, flip them to the other side, and copy them again. And with that, I've pretty much finished up this burger joint. If you enjoyed what I did in this episode, please go ahead and click that like button. If you've not already, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, so that you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. Thank you, and I hope to see you all again for another episode of Appleford Amusement Park in Planet Coaster.